And hello, everyone, and welcome to the Copyright 2.0 show, episode number 356. As usual, my name is Jonathan Bailey. When would my name not be Jonathan Bailey? My name is Batman. Okay, but anyways, I'm Jonathan Bailey from the site Plagiarism Today, which can be found at plagiarismtoday.com. And joining me, as usual, a wonderful, friendly, smiling face, an attorney who I'm pretty sure is about to give you a very, very stern reminder. His name is Evan Sherez. Evan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing fine, doing fine.
So about that reminder, I have to every time remind
Yes.
everyone that they are not receiving any legal advice from me, and that this is just merely my commentary, and should serve as an education.
Don't be stupid. That's what, as I like to say, don't be an idiot. Yeah, if you pull your legal advice off of a podcast you found on the internet, you've made some poor life choices. I'm just throwing that out there. But yeah, anything happen? Anything shaken to chat about? Anything exciting?
Well, John, I'm pretty excited that I'll be joining Amalfi Home Furniture as in-house counsel pretty shortly.
Yay! Yeah, I know you've been looking for a while, been waiting to hear word about the conclusion of the search. Knew you had a lot of options, knew things were going, but
Yep.
that's the thing. People have to realize when you are a lawyer, especially a new one, it's very exciting trying to find where you're going to land.
Yeah,
I'm glad you found it.
it's a really tough legal market for sure, but I had a few options, and I haven't been searching that long, but
No, not
I'm
God,
excited.
no.
I'm excited to be joining a really fast-growing company that is going to have me handling all kinds of different projects, from IP and trademark and copyright to contract review, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I get to put my hands in the business side as well. So.
And that's the thing about being in-house counsel is you really are going to be doing you're going to show up at work not knowing what you're going to do that day. Well, you'll probably have some idea of day to day, but you know what I mean in principle.
Yeah. Well, it's always exciting when, like, after 3 or 4 days of heavy legal research, they're like, today, we need you to move a table.
Move this table and put it on a truck for us. Yeah. We need an extra pair of strong hands. But yeah, so that's really, really cool. Very, very happy for you. Wish you the best with it. And yeah, it will involve some IP and trademark, in particular trademark, but also some copyright too. You never avoid copyright when you're doing in-house counsel anywhere.
No, of course not.
Everyone has to deal with copyright when they're in-house.
I'll be putting together a few presentations on what are the do's and don'ts to my new team. So we have a staff of about
20 people, so. Stop pulling images off Google. Let's start there. Let's quit filling your what now.
All right. Well,
sure they don't.
Do you want to jump right into the stories we're going to be talking about today?
Yeah, we actually have a lot of stories. I hope we have some Jay-Z fans listening, honestly, because we have well, first off, we have probably the most predictable story of the week. We're starting off with talking about a little bit more of the Blurred Lines trial. But then we've got a back-to-back Jay-Z-thon going here. Talking about a case somewhat possibly related to the Blurred Lines case, but also some interesting news dealing with streaming music in Jay-Z. Then we take sort of an international lean as we look at Belgian court ruling that ISPs do not have to pay copyright levies. We also have a very bizarre copyright dispute in Canada taking place. This is very interesting. Also, China, we have news from there, Dish Network and a bunch of Chinese broadcasters holding a manufacturer to task. And finally, your Schadenfreude moment of the week as an apartment complex with a no bad reviews rule gets a lot of bad reviews. So busy copyright week and a lot to go on.
Yeah, that last story is my favorite story.
It's a beautiful story. So you got that's why it's last, to force you to stick around for it, dear reader or viewer or whatever. So yeah, you want to jump right in. We're talking, like I said, first story of the week, predictable enough. Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams lawyers say they're filing for an appeal. They're planning an appeal. Let me put on my shocked face.
Yeah. They are, quote, going to try every post-trial remedy that is available to them. And I believe what they said is that they owe it to songwriters around the world to appeal this ruling because, like most people that lose a lawsuit, they'll try to kind of brand it as like the worst thing that's ever happened to their industry. So They believe, because and maybe they do actually honestly believe that they wrote it within an acceptable gray area of inspiration. That's not copying, and so and I think they have a point there that for basically forever people were inspired by other musicians, and everyone kind of let it slide because that's how the music industry ran, and they, having done the same, feel honestly that they did nothing wrong.
Yeah, and some of this is in 2015. We now have tools and techniques to analyze music that didn't exist, say, even just 20 years ago. We have things that can analyze music and pick out like a micro fraction of a second sample that, just a few years ago, you didn't clear those. No one was going to even notice it.
Yeah,
some of it's that. But I got to say, I was personally surprised by the backlash against this ruling online.
Yeah, everyone seems pretty much shocked. Most of the analysis I read thought it was going to go the other way because...
Yeah, and they do, dude. Yeah, me. I was in that analysis.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't really think they have much of a case on appeal, to be honest with you. The jury is the finder of fact. And, unless there was a crucial, moment where the incorrect law was applied, they don't really have much of an argument here. That's generally where an appeal will win. When you go to appeal, there's generally 3 different ways in which an appellate judge will review your case. He'll issue conclusions of law in a way that's called de novo review, which is basically no deference whatsoever to the trial court. It becomes an issue about the law and whether it was, constructed properly. So this could either be in, the way a jury was instructed about the law, or a certain ruling about, the recordings that were played for the jury. So yeah, that's the way that most appeals are successful, because it's really like a brand new bite at the apple. But as far as I know, I haven't read anything about that really happening.
And in the run up to the trial, it was the gay estate that was losing all of its petitions to decide how the facts would be presented and how the jury would be instructed. Williams and Thicke, they won nearly every single argument about those issues.
Right. And, if it's not that, there's a second way. It's called, if there's an abuse of discretion standard, and now you're getting to like a much higher standard in which the appellate judge has to look at the trial judge and be like, this person not only made like an incorrect procedural decision in the course of the trial, but it was really an abuse of their discretion, because, a lot of the times the judge will say, what, I'll allow it to go this way, or I'll allow it to go that way when, one lawyer wants to say something that's in a gray area, or wants to proceed in a fashion which is disputed. It's already a difficult standard to meet. And then at the very top, you got your when rulings are not supported by competent or substantial evidence, which is basically you'll have to show to an appellate judge that nothing in the record supports what ended up happening.
Yeah, they had obviously 12 lunatics on that jury that were spacing out when they filled in the form.
Exactly.
It was a bunch of 5-year-olds from, it's like, yeah, you have to that you really have to show a level of incompetence on the jury, a level of insanity.
Right.
That is, I think, almost impossible in this case, because as I've said before, reasonable people can disagree on this.
Agreed. And, just another quick comment that, an appeal isn't their only option. They can try to have damages reduced through, something called a remitter.
And we saw that in the Jamie Thomas Rassett case. That was a big issue in that. And,
but yeah, I feel like from the numbers that I was able to look at about how much money the song made and revenues, the gay family isn't asking for 100%. They're only getting a piece of it. So, I don't think this is going to be turned over.
Yeah, and it's a situation where I get that a lot of people are upset about it, and a lot of people do genuinely think this is the worst thing to happen to music since Robin Thicke himself. But burn. Oh, but the point remains.
I actually like Bird lines of the
I
song.
know, I know.
I think it's enormously catchy.
But I've got to say I enjoy the Weird Al parody infinitely more.
Oh my god, yeah, that was brilliant.
That was brilliant song. Um, but it is indeed quite catchy. There's no doubt about that. It was one of those songs that was like genetically modified to be an ear hook. You can't
Yeah,
get
it
it
was
out.
designed for that. I once heard that Weird Al actually, even though he probably doesn't need it to do parodies, although I'm not entirely convinced by that statement, that he actually asked permission of the songwriters
Yes, he does.
before he does the parodies. So I wonder now if he is going to approach the Gay family to relicense or re-spiritually license his song.
That's a good question. A lot of people, that was like the first thing people asked me when this word came out was not, what do you think this means for musicians? What do you think this means
What
for music?
about
What
Weird
happens to Weird
Al?
Al? What happens to Weird Al? And I'm like, well, legally, I think he's in roughly the same position. I mean, I don't necessarily think he faces, there were incidences where there was some confusion with the getting permission. Coolio was the one that leaps to mind, and no lawsuit emerged from that. There was just Weird Al thought he had permission. Coolio didn't think he'd given it. Something between his people and Coolio's people got messed up. These things happen. And they ended up settling their quote unquote beef. Not that Coolio and Weird Al really can have a beef. That's that's almost impossible to imagine that. But it's so yeah, legally I understand where you're coming from, but I don't think he's in any danger because of this. I don't think he's really facing anything, because by the time you get it's so far removed from got to give it up now that it's almost impossible.
Yeah, I would say so. So, I think our next story really goes to show that although legally we don't think this is a game-changing case, the ripples have reached the shores, at least the European shores, because I don't think it's coincidence now that Jay-Z is settling his spat with a Swiss jazz musician.
Yeah, the 70-year-old Swiss jazz musician is a sentence I never thought I would string together. I'm just going to throw that out. That sounds very weird, but his name, and help me, do you know the pronunciation of his name?
Do I know that? Let me open it up quickly, and I could try to help you out here.
It's Bruno
Sperry.
Sperry? Okay.
Sperry.
Yeah. Now, basically, Sperry claimed that he... that Jay-Z on the song Lilith on the Way, I'm sorry, that Jay-Z's song Versus,
yes.
sorry, had copied his instrumental from Lilith on the Way, sampled it in some way.
Did you get the chance to listen to the two tunes?
No, I did not. Even though they're also just here at the bottom of the article. Now I look
they're right at the bottom of the article, and they're identical. I don't know if you want to play them for the listeners, but this is a lot closer to Bittersweet Symphony and Rolling Stones than it is to Blurred Lines and Marvin Gaye. It's almost identical.
Yeah. Now, Jay-Z, in this case, has been going on since 2013. I shouldn't say case. There's been no lawsuit filed, but this disagreement, battle of words has been going on since 2013, and Jay-Z has staunchly denied anything here. And yet, as you pointed out, mere days after the Blurred Lines jury verdict, Jay-Z has agreed to hand over 50% of his royalties.
Right. I think this is a consideration of the bad press the whole case is getting, and might as well take this time to sweep this one right under the rug.
And it's not like Jay-Z doesn't have other things going on in his life and other more important matters. I mean, I'm sure this is not a trivial amount of money, especially to Mr. Sperry, but it's not it's not going to be a career breaker for Jay-Z, basically.
No, and Bruno Sperry said himself that this whole situation was just ridiculous. He should have just licensed it. It would have been so cheap.
Yeah,
he's a
70-odd-year-old Swiss jazz musician.
79-year-old jazz musicians aren't holding out for the big paydays. So, you know what? Before we get on to, I think, the next story, why not? Let's play these two.
Okay, go for it.
Back. And so just here we go. Here's going to start with Jay-Z's Versus.
Go for it.
Click on the video now
right after
signing special on a new 2015 Honda Accord.
This podcast brought to you by Honda.
Honda. Yes. This is Jay-Z's song. All right, now let's go to Bruno. Hopefully no ad.
Ooh. Oh. It may not be exactly identical, but to my non-jazz ears, it is remarkably close. Now, that being said, of course, the commentary as well are these common to jazz, or these chord structures and changes. So, with common to jazz, is there prior art using this, et cetera, et cetera? I can't comment on those things, but you play the two clips side by side. The similarity is gobsmackingly obvious.
Right. The interesting part about this particular case, in that if Swiss law is the same as U.S. law, which requires access to a piece before you can prove copying in most cases, it might be an interesting legal venture, which is maybe why there was no lawsuit settled, in proving that Jay-Z had access to essentially a almost 40-year-old recording from this Swiss musician.
Yeah,
because it requires access plus substantial similarity to show infringement.
Yeah, he says the sample is about 35 years old, making the sample as old as I am almost, or actually a little bit older than I am. So, wow, I am almost as old as the sample.
Yeah, well, I believe when I listen to those two, I think they're extremely similar, and that's why he's going to get 50% of Jay-Z's royalties for the song.
Yeah, and it's like you said, if he had licensed it in advance, it would have been super cheap. It certainly wouldn't be 50% of the royalties. And it would have been done. It would never have been a news story. We wouldn't be talking about the Copyright 2.0 show. It'd just be another day at the office for some poor guy at Jay-Z's label.
Yeah, probably a one-time fee, $5-10 grand. I mean, who knows what he's charging, but anyways, Jay-Z is not too worried because he just spent he spent $40 million to buy a European. Is this also Swiss, or was it Swedish? Swedish. A streaming service called. I have the page open.
Yeah, it's
Spyro.
The company is a Spyro, and it has two music services underneath it: WIMP, capital W, lowercase I, capital M, and capital P, and a service called Tidal, or the two services underneath it. Yeah, and Tidal is actually a pretty interesting service. It's the one that's been getting the most attention because it, unlike your Spotify, your Rhapsodies, etc., focuses on "quote unquote" lossless streaming. It's the hi-fi quality audio streaming service, and for that it charges a hefty premium. According to this, it's $19.99, 20 euros per month, which I believe is gonna put it somewhere in the $26 per month range here in the U.S.
I was pretty shocked at. I mean, that's a pretty high price point for a streaming service.
Yes. Considering Spotify here in the States is $10 a month.
If you want to pay, it's free also.
Exactly. If you don't mind ads, it's free.
So yeah,
but screw you, I'm not getting ads on my morning jog. Okay, it's just the rules. No, but yeah, it's more than double what most streaming services cost for lossless audio. And I've got to be honest, I've never listened to Spotify or anything else. I went, you know what? This audio quality is terrible. I can barely hear it.
Well, maybe it's time to find a new streaming service?
Maybe. Yeah, I've never thought that, though, listening to Spotify. It hasn't crossed my mind. It's to me, I think the quality of Spotify is perfectly acceptable. But maybe I'm just not an audiophile.
No, I'm with you. Spotify works just fine for me. And, there's one thing if this company was profitable. But according to the article, they're losing like a couple million every
quarter, $5 million a quarter.
So I don't know what his plan is with it. Maybe they have some patent tech, some tech that he thinks is going to be a good venture, or he thinks maybe the streaming service can turn it around.
Well, I think he's following in the footsteps of Dr. Dre a little bit here. Dr. Dre with Beats Audio. Of course, he
Right.
turned around and sold that to, along with Beats headphone company, to Apple for an amount of money I cannot even fathom fitting in this room that I am currently sitting in. You know?
I can. I've got. I think I've got a pile of cash somewhere.
Somewhere off camera right here. I could turn the webcam to face it, but that'd be like work, right? But yeah, no, it's just it was. So I think part of it is that, but part of it is also that there are plans to launch this in 22 different countries. Though this article on The Guardian refers to a U.S.-based service I've never heard of until this article called Deezer Elite, which is apparently got 200,000 subscribers here in the U.S. It does the lossless audio thing here. Which, like I said, I had never heard of this company until like this article.
Yeah, I can't really help you there.
I thought I was pretty up to date on all the music streaming services. Apparently, I was wrong. But that one's being launched globally. It says globally because that's easy to do. Launched in all 200 nations.
Wow.
You wanna stream it in Somalia? You go ahead.
That's probably a tough market.
Yeah, it's probably you might say piracy is a problem.
Oh God!
I'll show myself out.
I think that's the worst we've ever done in terms of puns. So
yes, it probably is.
Okay, let's go on to the next story. We have a Belgian court who has decided that ISPs do not have to pay a fee to a coalition of authors and publishers for offering access to copyrighted protected materials online. In Europe, there is a making available right. So even if someone doesn't download something, if you, let's say back in the day, had a bunch of pirated files and you had them on Napster, and then no one actually downloaded them, if you were in the US, you're probably fine. But in Europe, there's actually a violation for even making songs available if you don't have the license to do that, to eventually sell them.
Yeah, I put all of my pirated songs on top of a very tall mountain. And yeah, then that's up there. No one actually climbed the mountain to obtain the songs. It was still made available in the strictest sense of the word. But basically, this organization was a group called Sabam. It's basically like ASCAP is here in the U.S., representing composers, authors, and publishers. They claimed that since ISPs were making this content available, that they owed basically like what we would think of as a copyright levy, 3.4%. I want to know how they came up with that number. It had to come from somewhere, and it's not in this article. It might be, maybe it's because it's like similar to the levies on CDs or burnable CDs or whatever.
Some statutory language somewhere.
Yeah, it's probably something. But basically, they claimed that they owed 3.4% of the revenue from ISPs, which would be a pretty large amount of money. Let's be honest.
Right, and it's something that a lot of people here in the U.S. are trying to break into also. There's really been a big firewall for ISPs in terms of, holding them liable for, piracy and infringing activity that goes on because of their service, right? Because we have the whole concept of secondary liability, where if you are in some way contributing to an infringement and you're making money off of that, that's pretty much the two main things that you need to be doing to be held liable for some forms of secondary infringement here in the U.S. But ISPs seem to have really a firewall when it comes to this whole concept.
And that's because of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act that held basically mere, intermediaries, people that aren't hosting the content or providing the content or downloading it. Not people at either end of the communication. Getting my fingers in frame into the communication. People that are only in the intermediary are not liable for the mere transitory providers, basically. So, for better or for worse.
Right, but there's still people who are trying to say that your liability is gone, and this is to some. I think we talked about a suit a few episodes ago, that your installation is gone because you have knowledge. You have essentially what amounts to red flag knowledge of infringing activity, because you run the internet. Everyone gets on the internet in your town from your service, and here are all the instances of it happening. And you should lose your installation, and that's where some of the proactive systems like the H strike system, come into play.
80,000 strikes. What are we up to now?
Yeah, because people don't want to end up going to court. But this is obviously someone who was trying to break this, ISP firewall that they tend to have in terms of escaping any lawsuits for secondary liability for copyright infringement.
And it's interesting. A lot of it is PR, and this seems to be like one of the few times, whether or not we're ISPs, big ISPs, actually, are favored publicly, is in these types of disputes.
I think they're favored. It's kind of like a too big to fail situation. I think when you go in front of a judge, it's like, what is he really going to order an ISP to do? Shut down? And everyone in the area is going to lose their internet access. That's never going to happen. So I think remedies are going to have to end up being, if it ever does get to that stage where an ISP is guilty, we'll have to end up being, pretty creative.
Yeah, it's going to have to be financial remedies that don't end up resulting in these companies shutting down. Because like you said, we can't have Comcast or Time Warner or, wait, those will probably be the same company. Bad example. Cox, for example. We can't have them shutting down randomly and leaving a lot of people high and dry.
Yep. But, do you want to move on now, I guess?
Yeah, let's move on. This case really fascinated me. And I had to do a little digging into what in God's name was going on. But basically, it centers around two Canadian television service providers. That's what it fundamentally deals with.
Okay, so this is actually my home province. Quebec.
Well, maybe you should explain this.
So,
yeah.
So, yeah.
So you're from Quebec? I didn't know.
I am from Quebec. I'm from Montreal.
Oh, wow.
And so, as you explained,
it surprises me, but it does for some reason.
Well, I think most people don't think I'm from Quebec because they assume that everyone from Quebec is a native French speaker who would have an English accent. And I'm actually
from.
They
all wore berets all the time. It was and had like French rolls and French bread and.
No. That's South Park. The South Park's portrayal of Quebecers. Not quite accurate.
And your head doesn't do the little thing where it like divides on its mouth.
No, it doesn't.
Okay.
Yes. Where was I? So the Bell Express View has to pay Quebecer $137 million for not stopping signal piracy from 2000 from a period from like 1999 to like 2007. So, when you think a big financial award from one company to another for piracy, you're like, oh, someone must have been stealing someone else's content or signals. No, Bell didn't stop their consumers, or not their consumers, but consumers from stealing their signals, which then gave them essentially, the argument is, an unfair advantage and deprived Quebecer, who owns Videotron and one of the two biggest providers of television in Quebec, deprived them of finances and subscribers. Now, I won't name them by names, but growing up, I actually had a very good friend who had a satellite stealing signal, and we would go over to his place to watch the U.S. signal all the time, especially for the Super Bowl, because we would never get the good commercials. And so I saw this firsthand, that you were able to steal the signal, and there was a pretty broad underground business. And so this is the first I'm learning that apparently Bell actually knew about this and was doing it on purpose to kind of, in the long term, gain market share, when eventually they were able to stop the satellites. And then people were like, well, I like the service, so I might as well go to Bell.
Yeah, and that was the issue, was that the idea was that people were signing up for Bell and maybe getting like a basic package or something, basically just getting it to the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting some kind of component or signal stealing device, and then expanding rapidly greatly what they could get for the price. And this deprives not just competitors who are playing legitimately, because no one's going to go to Quebecor if they're going to have to pay 3 times the price whatever for the same number of channels, but also it deprives the channels of the royalties that they would be getting from this. And that's the basic gist of it. And yeah, I've never heard of a lawsuit of this. You did not do enough to prevent your own stuff from getting pirated, is exactly the argument.
Yep, and it's a pretty huge sum too. It's obviously anti-competitive in some capacity, and
and that's 137 million Canadian. That's equal to about 137 million United States.
I don't. I think they were on par a few months
Or,
ago. I think it's more like 85, 90 cents on the dollar now.
oh,
So
it
it's
is.
about
Aw, you
120.
ruined my joke. Dang it with
Uh,
your factual information.
sorry, you brought a lawyer on for a reason.
Oh, but yeah, it's not as crazy as with euros though, and so forth. Though euros about to hit parity, from what I
Oh my
understand.
God, it's actually lower than I thought. The Canadian dollar is actually currently 79 cents.
Wow, what happened?
I don't know.
Did the dollar mysteriously strengthen against everything because it's doing well against the euro too?
Well, the U.S. economy is much stronger than most of the rest of the world. Not necessarily Canada's, but when the U.S. economy is strong and unemployment is at 5.5%, you end up having people buy the dollar again, which raises its value.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm still getting used to the idea of buying dollars, but and I've traveled internationally and have done it, and it still confuses me sometimes. Nothing confuses me quicker than currency exchanges when I go overseas.
So I'm actually getting messages from my friend whose family used to do this,
Okay.
and he's explaining to me and he's listening to the show
Oh God, help us.
that they would turn the satellites to a direct TV signal, and then they had cards that were illegally programmed to get all the channels. So they would get, I guess, Bell's satellites, turn it to a certain direction, and then it was technically not illegal at the time because there's no law against it, and that's probably where we are now, and that's why this case probably took so many years, because they had to end up finding a theory that it was just anti-competitive behavior creative in a way, and that's consumers did it.
Yeah, wow. That is, I got this instant vision of a family going out and, okay, turn it this way just a little bit, and like actually physically moving it, even though I don't know how it was done. Honestly, it could have been done, like some of these satellite dishes are motorized and whatnot, but still, wow, that is fascinating that it was so easy.
Yeah,
Kind of
well,
frightening.
us Canadians are, and we're an industrious bunch. So
Yes, you are.
when it's like minus 20 for 6 months out of the year, you find a way to get good TV.
You know what? I do not dispute that, and I cannot judge, because if I lived, that far north, I'd probably be doing desperate measures too for entertainment at certain months of the year. It's like the old joke. I can't remember who I heard it from, but it said more people got to enjoy summer in Montreal last year because it fell on a Saturday.
What part of the year was it?
Summer,
Summer, yeah.
because it fell on a Saturday.
Okay.
It was old joke I heard from an advertising professor years ago who was from Canada. Why we asked him why he moved to South Carolina of all places, and that was his explanation, was right there. But so yeah, it's a very fascinating case. But basically, it stems from you didn't do enough to protect your signal from being infringed, therefore you are liable for
So
anti-competitive behaviors. Yeah, it seems crazy, but it's true.
you go on the roof with a ladder,
Wow, they
and
would.
yeah, this is what I'm hearing is that someone would go on the roof with a ladder and scream out, "Tell me when you get a signal," and that's how they did it. So, anyways, I don't want to incriminate my good friend anymore, and I'd
That's
love to
crazy.
talk about this apartment complex
Yeah,
story.
we'll get there. We'll get there. But first, we got to tear through China.
Oh,
Um,
Aereo China.
yeah, Aereo-ish China or whatever. It's actually a physical device in this case. It's called a TV pad, and if you Google TV pad, you will get a lot of Chinese language sites that will let you order it for very little money, actually.
So this is obviously a rampant problem in China.
Yeah, this is a physical device that you would buy, and apparently, according to Dish Network and a bunch of Chinese broadcasters, it allows you to pirate the signal from various sources and view it on your TV. Now, what's strange?
I guess the Canadians and the Chinese have more alike, than
Well, I
we.
mean, but you see, that's just it. This is the thing where the Canadian approach is sort of a DIY. The Chinese is go and buy this device, this cheap
Right.
electronic device, and do it, have it done for you. Yeah, basically, what it does is it connects through these signals provided by intermediaries and pulls those from the internet, basically. Now, the issue is the manufacturers of the TV pad are saying, no, 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 it's not us. We aren't doing this. Our intermediaries, these third parties, are doing the piracy. But Dish and others are claiming that, hey, we've investigated these intermediaries and third parties and found that either they don't exist or they are you, basically, is what they have discovered.
Right.
So
I think one of the interesting things in this case is that it's in a California court.
yeah.
And so I'd be interested to hear what the jurisdictional presence is for some of these Chinese, for some of these manufacturers, and whether they're going to end up with any real remedy if they're unable to, enforce any decision. Because I believe all these items are manufactured in Asia, and so I didn't read much about their presence in California.
Well, I do, according to this article, and this is on the Hollywood Reporter. This is, I believe, no, it's not an Eric Gardner article. It is Austin. Oh, forget it. I apologize, Austin. I can't read it. It's my reading monitor is too far back for me to make out the full name. I need to fix that. But the point is, they are distributing it in the United States, and the companies that are handling the import and distribution in the U.S. are also party to this case.
Okay.
So I think that's where we're getting some of the jurisdictional stuff from, and also I think that hones in on what some of the repercussions might be. Is even if they can't really get at the manufacturer directly and enforce it there, they probably can at least stop distribution in the United States of it. So that might be good, might be better, but yeah, it's a bizarre case involving this tiny little Apple TV-like device that apparently lets you get pirated signals from a lot of companies. There's no way that couldn't end in a copyright lawsuit.
Yeah. Well, they've been sued under a number of different theories in California.
Yeah. Now, not just copyright. It's like every theory you can think of.
If this is true about what's happening, I think we're going to end up seeing a swift resolution.
This one will not take long. I predict you're right. So apartment hunting. I don't know if you're hunting for apartments lately, Evan. I know.
I'm actually moving in a few weeks to a few blocks down. So I'll be taping from a new location. Unfortunately, this
new bunker
wall is not going to be there anymore. My walls are actually green. It's not going to be fantastic on the eyes.
Well, if you had moved to Orlando, you could have moved to a place called Windermere K Apartments, I believe is the name. And yeah, they're apparently brand new. Almost, no one lives there apparently. Almost no one's actually moved in. Only up until a few days ago had only a couple of reviews on Yelp and so forth. So relatively new place. But they apparently did something that was kind of stupid.
Yeah, this is the second time I've heard of this happening. And the first one, the exact same thing happened. They basically put in a clause in tenants' contract saying that you can't leave us bad reviews, and if you do, we're going to charge you $10,000.
Yeah.
The other one was a $500 charge for bad reviews, and I wonder if I can find the story here. But basically, what ended up happening is that the internet at large swarmed Yelp. And of course, they're not subject to the language in the tenant's contract saying, like, you guys are horrible, that you can't do this, and gave them 1-star reviews.
Yeah, and they called it a social media addendum when Windermere did in this case. And not only did it say you can't leave bad reviews, but it said we hold the copyright in any photos you take within your apartment. So this podcast right now, your portion of it could theoretically be copyright your apartment complex, at least according to this kind of outlandish legal theory and addendum and so forth. And it's unclear if and how this would ever stand any reasonable challenge.
Well, I mean, you're a private company. You don't really have any First Amendment rights if it's a private deal. If you sign a contract saying that I agree not to leave a bad review about you, if or not, I'm going to charge you. You're going to get charged. I don't know if there's a lot you can do about it.
Now, I do know that there were similar cases involving a dentist. There was a similar case involving a dentist. In fact, a lot of the medical profession got in on this.
Yeah.
Those were overturned because basically they were bringing people in for emergency dental surgery.
Right. That's a
Signing
different
this contract.
story. That's a concept called the contract of adhesion,
Yeah.
where if court can look at a contract and be like, oh my God, the bargaining power was so uneven in this, and it's one person really had to do it, like in your emergency dental surgery situation, where we're not going to enforce this. This is unenforceable because the court won't be basically a part in having someone take extreme advantage of somebody else in an emergency situation.
Yeah.
I found the story. It was called
Okay.
Union Street Guest House in Hudson, New York. Attempted to fine wedding parties $500 for any negative reviews.
I remember that the wedding.
It
Yes.
is the CNN article, so it got major exposure. So this was a big lesson, and I guess you really have to keep history in mind, otherwise it repeats itself. And obviously, these people did not.
And the other thing to remember is you can only force people to this contract that have signed it. You can't hold anyone that's never signed this contract to it.
Right. So
even under the best of circumstances, you can't.
Obviously, they didn't imagine it blowing up on social media and having the good people,
including Hitler being one of them.
This was really funny. Obviously, it was a parody, but someone left a comment on Yelp under the name A.Hitler. It's like, my kind of management. I really like these guys. So I thought that was pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I got to say that there's been a lot of creativity. One guy said, refused to sign contract or left bad review, have been locked in dungeon here for the past 3 months or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been very creative with their negative reviews. And, this is the lesson in this. And there is something on the internet called the Streisand effect, which is that by trying to hide something, you can actually draw significantly more attention to it. So, sometimes you just take your lumps and take a few bad reviews with hopefully a lot of good ones. And
what was the name of the hotel?
What
was the name of the hotel?
The hotel?
Yeah, not the hotel, the apartment.
Oh, Windermere K. WindermereK space CAY apartments. It's near Orlando, Florida. You gonna look it up on Yelp?
Yeah, I am. Okay. So Windermere K, 84 reviews with an average of 1 star.
Yep.
Here's a 5-star review. And why is it only showing me 2? Oh, here are the recommended reviews. I think you have to go to the ones that are not recommended. I only see 2. Maybe
I see a bunch of reviews actually. I've got it up on mine.
Maybe I'm at the wrong one.
But yeah, there is that recommended versus, you can sort by date. Is one thing you can know that doesn't work. There is supposed to be a way to get not just the recommended reviews. But yeah, it's but I suspect even some of these recommended reviews, because I've got a lot of 1 stars here, I suspect a lot of them were from this story.
Yeah.
Because as they noted, this place really just opened,
Right.
There's no way on earth there are 115 is what I'm showing here. Well, now I'm showing 5 on. It's weird. The numbers are jumping depending on where I look. It's kind of bizarre.
Yeah, there's probably
some filtering going on here
right now. And you know what? I think if you're in the Orlando area and you're looking for an apartment, it's probably a good time to go there because they changed their policy, and they're probably going to be starving for tenants. So bargaining power in your favor.
And it is brand new, like I said. So just saying.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily a terrible idea. I don't know anything about it other than it's new. And yeah, like you said, the policy's gone. They removed it. They said it was a holdover from, like, they'd gotten the contract from someone else, previous owners of the company or whatever, and had not removed it or whatever or something like that. Yeah.
It's like, that provision? No, it's not.
No, we didn't do that.
No.
Well, you say that, but I've actually had something like that happen to me. When we moved to New Orleans, we moved into an apartment complex, and when we moved in, there was like the special deal, right? So we took advantage of that, and then the rates went up after 6 months, and then like 2 months after that, they raised it again, and then they tried to raise it a third time. And my girlfriend basically by that point she was working at a law office and started going through the lease with a fine-tooth comb.
Okay.
And basically learned that you had to provide 30-day notice of rent increases, and they were only providing like 14-day in this case, something like that. And that if they didn't, the contract was void and would become a month-to-month lease, and we could leave in 30 days, where we had another year on the contract otherwise.
Did you end up leaving?
Yep. We ended up actually going down there. She showed him the contract, highlighted the passages that were relevant, said, this is in the lease we signed. And it was basically what had happened is a new management company had taken over and not actually bothered to study the leases that the previous tenants had signed, and we're not complying with them. And so basically, yeah, we said, this is it. We're turning in our 30-day notice, and we left. We actually rented a house in a much nicer neighborhood for a lot less money soon thereafter. So
that's great.
So sometimes these things do happen. And so if you do think you're getting jerked around by your apartment, read your lease. Read it really carefully. You'd be surprised how many apartment complexes do not actually know what is in the lease they're having you sign. It's kind of mind-blowing.
Yeah, well, I actually have a lease to read right now because like I said, I'm moving into my new place, and I want to go over it one more time because it'd be really great to get my landlord to pay for the place to get really scrubbed down. It's a house, and it's an amazing location, but it's a little old, and I got to lobby him to do that before I get in there.
And that's just it. It may be in there where you can do it. So you never know. It's absolutely mind-blowing sometimes what people put in their leases.
Well, I think from what I read the first time is that I'm responsible for cleaning it when I leave. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to say, like, hey, if you want me to clean it as I'm leaving, it should be spotless as I come in.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That seems only fair to me. Or at the very least, they should offer you some kind of incentive to do the cleaning when you get there.
Yes.
Maybe a little off your first rent, maybe a little off that deposit, something.
Yep.
A little help.
All right.
Well, that's all I've got. Any final thoughts? Anything else going on?
Not too much. That's all. I just think it was a good show, and thanks again to my good friend,
who shall remain nameless.
For his inside scoop on the Quebec satellite stealing phenomena. And
for those who are in the Quebec area, apparently this doesn't work anymore, is what this case is telling us, because it only goes up to 2007, right?
Well, at least until 2007, Bell was complicit. It doesn't mean it's not happening anymore. It just means that Bell is no longer complicit in allowing it to happen.
Oh, well. So it probably doesn't work, we think. Ish.
We discourage it.
We definitely discourage it. But yeah. Well, on that note, everyone, thank you for joining us. My name is Jonathan Bailey. I am username Plagiarism Today at all the social media places of your personal enjoyment. And I also blog at plagiarismtoday.com.
And my name is Evan Sherris. You find me on Twitter at Evan Sherris. And
you need a blog, dude.
And eventually, maybe I'll start blogging for them all.
Yeah, you need a blog. You need something. You need a blog. Hashtag get Evan a blog.
My life isn't that interesting.
That's not going to become a thing. But thank you again, and we will see you guys next week.